Welcome back, everyone. We've let our eyeballs dry overnight and they look pretty good. I think they'll do well. We can sand them, but today we're going to be working on the mouth a little bit. So we're going to take off that structure that we put on the back to hold the eyeballs in. And first thing we're going to do is to drill a hole in the mouth to sort of get us started. That just helps us to open it up so we can do some carving without, trying to stick an X-Acto through it. So we're going to use this bit. It's about the right size. I'm using my handy dandy Black & Decker tool. And I always like to try to get a place like this started by getting a little hole with the X-Acto point, just so that the bit doesn't go skittering off across his face and ruin it. So that should work, and we just put the drill bit in it, and these things run slower than a normal drill, so that's handy so that you can kind of control it more. But I do this at an angle, sort of pointed upward, just because there's a structure behind the mouth, and I don't want to have to go through the thickness of that. So I kind of know from past experience that I need to sort of angle this up a little bit. So that worked well. So we've got our opening there. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to try to remove a lot of the lip structure that's there now, because we don't need it. So let's just look at this picture that we're going for. We want to make the lips sort of curved in the center so they pooch out around that. So we're going to try to just get rid of the structure around the part that sticks out, because we're going to be putting down this epoxy on top of it, and we'll just be able to mold it better if we don't have the thickness of the lips underneath that will keep us from getting the shape that we want. And so I started doing this with my X-Acto knife, and quickly realized that it was just an odd angle trying to carve this off. I mean, I guess you could do it if that's all you had. I was starting to feel like I was going to jab this X-Acto into my finger, which I've done before, and it really hurt and messed up my finger. So I'm just going to clean this off a little bit, and then I'm going to use a tool that I have that's really for nails, and I bought it off of AliExpress for like, I don't know, $15 or something. And I use this little roundy ball a lot of times when I want to grind out something in a little bit more speed than normal and a little bit deeper than normal. So we're just going to do a little grinding here, so enjoy the music. lot of grinding there. So let's see where we are at this point. You can see from the side that we have gotten rid of quite a bit of the protrusion of the lips. I'm gonna just take another look at our picture just to see if I think we could mold around this. So we want to have that, you know, come down so that it curves in, and also the chin kind of is protruding and then it curves into the mouth. And hopefully then I think we'll have room. But we've also got these grooves on the side that we need to look at because those are not really there. And I think we're going to have to do a little carving to make those indentions on the actual face so that, you know, when we use the epoxy, it will blend into that. At this point, I don't think that there's enough depth in the face to be able to do that. So I just want to do a little sanding here to get rid of some of the residue so I can see where I am. I have to do this occasionally just because the roughness of the material kind of keeps me from being able to actually see where I am. I'm also sanding down the nose a little bit because I do want to blunt that. I don't want it to be pointy, which these Blythe dolls tend to have a really pointy nose, and it's not childlike at all. So there you can kind of see where we are at this point. We've made a big mess, of course, but I want to use a pencil to mark the sides where the grooves will be. First of all, that helps me to be symmetrical, and second of all, it just helps me to keep track of where I am. And I'm going to extend the line on the face past where I'll be carving just so I can keep an eye on that, you know, while I'm carving, because once I start carving, the line will go away where I'm at. And also want to keep an idea of where I'm going to make the indention because I'm going to have to carve that area out some more. So this is all just a huge process. It's just not something you can do in one sitting. It's not something you can do overnight because you've got to let the epoxy dry. Don't be afraid to mark on the face. You can always sand that off. And we are going to have to paint over this. Obviously, because we're putting down this dark epoxy, which is not the same skin color. If it was just the eyes, it would be different because I could maybe fake that and, you know, because they could be a little different color. But so anyway, I want to use the ball tool to get into this groove, and actually looks like my smaller ball tool is not in there. I did have one that was a little bit smaller that might have worked better, but anyway, we'll use this other one that has sort of a pointy ball and see if we can carve out a little bit also under the nose. I want to make sure that's flat because we're going to be extending the epoxy up there, and I don't want that that's not going to have that curved philtrum, the groove over the lip like you see with a lot of the Blythe dolls. This one's not going to have that because it's you know, she's going to got her lips pulled in, so it's going to be just very rounded looking. So now I found the round ball there, and so now we're going to just start cutting out the groove and cutting down a little bit more under the nose of that protrusion that was the lip originally. So enjoy the carving and the music. Okay, finished with that carving. So you can see we have our indentions there on either side, and we'll be working with that as we continue. And just to give you an idea of where we are, the hole you can see there coming through the back is that one. And you see how the sort of the bottom lip portion has that platform of plastic behind it of the doll structure. So we have to keep that in mind when we're carving, because that's really hard to carve through. But we're going to have to carve out a little bit of this and get rid of the plastic so we can use the epoxy here. So basically what I'm going to be doing is the same procedure I used when I did the open mouth Blythe. If you saw that video, I'm just sort of cutting in V shapes on either the top and then on the bottom towards the sides of the mouth, and then I can sort of pop out the piece that I cut, and just keep doing that as I am able to continue to open up this area more. I need to get it pretty open to be able to mold it the way I think I'm going to be able to mold it. I mean, I've never done this before. Can you believe that? I've never done this before. I mean, I've carved the mouth out, but I've never tried to do a mouth like the one we're going to be making. But hey, I like to do that the first time on video, you know, so I can make a lot of mistakes and you guys can laugh at me. Hopefully I won't. Hopefully, even if I make a mistake, we'll be able to fix it, because I'm all about fixing mistakes, as you know, from years of my videos. So anyway, I'm just going to continue side to side, you know, trying to open up this mouth area. And, I mean, you can, you know, this isn't like the only thing you could do with a Blythe mouth and using this technique. Basically, anything you wanted to carve and use some epoxy to make a mouth that's different than what it has, you can do. In fact, when I make my dolls of color, my African American dolls, I do this just because I don't want to have the epoxy backed up by anything that will keep me from molding it the way I want to mold the lips. So same process, and you can see here it's kind of a cute little mouth. I mean, you could you could almost do a mouth like this. It would just be like no lips, maybe a bit like a baby mouth or something. But it just needs to be pretty open for the process that we're going to do. So yeah, just keep carving till you feel like you've got enough of it gone that you're going to be able to put in the lip structure that you need. And hopefully you won't cut yourself, because I have definitely cut myself doing this before, and it is not fun. X-Actos, for some reason, are so incredibly painful. So be careful if you're doing this. Be very, very careful. I know I'm trying to be, at least. The last time I cut my finger, I think you guys saw it, and I bled on camera for a while. But sometimes when you're working on something and you can't stop, you have to just keep blotting it. I don't know. I think I must have been taking aspirin. All right, let's see where we are. You see these indentions on either side? We're really going to have to open up the sides a little bit more too, I think, because we're going to have to press in when we do the epoxy, so it needs to be a little bit wider on the sides there. So I'm going to carve that out a little bit more. You don't have to be too, worried if you get it too much, because you're going to be covering the whole thing up with epoxy. So don't worry. I mean, be careful, but don't worry. You'll be okay. Everything will be okay. As long as we got those little grooves there, we know where we want the grooves to be, and we'll mold around it. All right, so we're going to have to take another little grinding break and grind down the top and the bottom of the lip some, just to make sure we got it as smooth as we want and as ground down as we want. So enjoy another little grounding break, and I'll be right back. right. I hope you're enjoying that music. I really like that song. I really like it a lot. And it's royalty free. Yay. So anyway, now we're going to mix up some epoxy. So I'm going to grab a couple of pieces that are equal size. And we're going to start smashing them up together. And, you know, we've talked about this before, just to make sure that you're making this a process that, you know, that you're getting everything mixed really, really well, because you don't want to come back the next day and find that just because you didn't mix it long enough or well enough that it didn't get hard. Because that's happened to me, and that's not much fun. So just you know, be diligent, and you know, you could think of it as a little workout for your fingers. Mix it up really good. I usually spend at least a minute or two mixing it. You can somewhat tell by the color, because the two are a little bit different color, but you want to mix it enough that you feel that you don't see any difference in the color, as well as that it's pretty soft too. That's the other thing that happens, is it tends to get a lot softer, you know, from the warmth of your fingers and everything. So I think we've got it pretty well done. So I'm just going to pinch a piece of this off and push it into that hole, and then we'll just start molding around it. And we'll be cutting some off, but it's a good place to start. It looks funny. It looks like 3 eyeballs now. So as I said in the previous video where we were talking about molding, you want to have some water. So I always squirt some in a little cup and have my spray bottle handy, just to make sure that I've always got some. I always use this tool when I'm molding things. It's my handy dandy clay and epoxy tool. And if I put some water on it, it slips right over everything. It works really well. So the things that we have to do here is we have to mold the top of that ball of epoxy down to where it merges with the skin right under the nose. So that has to be really flat. And then it's going to curve in a very rounded manner down to where the lip is. I don't know why that looks like Homer Simpson to me, the lips. I don't know. Maybe not. Anyway, I'm just really doing this now to sort of get the spacing right, because we're gonna be working with this so much that eventually I'll probably cover that opening up, but I want to know where I am. I'm gonna try to merge the epoxy into the grooves on either side also. And I think, you know, now that I'm looking at it and I've looked at that picture again, I think we're going to have to do some epoxy work on the cheeks and build those up, because they're very rounded cheeks on that picture, and it just sort of adds to the facial structure of how the lips are pulled in to have the rounded cheeks. So I'm really thinking we're going to have to stretch this out another day to do that part. So we'll finish up this video by ending, you know, with the lip portion, and we'll have to let that dry overnight. But I really feel like we are going to have to do some additional work on the cheeks, and then we'll have to do some spray painting to cover up the epoxy and basically have a uniform skin color throughout. And when I say spray paint, I don't mean out of a can. I mean airbrush. Yeah. And you know what? I'm not good with the airbrush. I just want to admit that right up front. I am not good with the airbrush. I don't like doing it. It's always a hassle because it's always clogged up, and I have to spend like an hour getting it unclogged, even though I cleaned it when I last used it. There's some magical like gremlin that gets in there and clogs everything up just to make things difficult for me. So I don't like it. And then I don't like that I've bought 3 different airbrushes, and I'm not really happy with either one. I don't think they're smooth. I think they spit out some paint, and it could very well be how I'm doing it, because I admit I'm not an expert at it. I've sort of just had to teach myself over the years, but it is what it is. If you're going to do something like this, the only way to get a smooth coat of paint for the complexion is airbrush. that's just how it is. So right now I'm just doing a little intrusion of the corner there just to mark my place again. I have to keep doing that because I cover up where I've been, and I don't want to lose sight of exactly where I need to make the lips be curved in or not. So you know, you're just gonna have to work with this. It's just how it is when you're carving, because I have to carve off some of the epoxy. I've just got, you know, too much. It's not exactly the shape that I want it in, and that's fine. You know, you're gonna be able to carve it off, and even if you don't get it exactly where you want, you're gonna be able to sand this afterward. So just as long as you can get it in the basic general shape, you'll be okay. The main thing I want is to get the curve in of the lips right, because that will be kind of hard for me to sand. It's just hard to get into small spaces, you know, without messing it up. And I find that epoxy is different in terms of being able to sand it well than the Blythe face. It just, like, it takes more sanding. So anytime I know I'm going to be using epoxy, I know I'm going to just have a hassle with sanding. That's just how it is, and I hate it. I wish there was a product that was different that worked as well, but epoxy is nice because it's really hard. It holds its shape. You know, it's easy to paint over, and you can carve it to some degree afterwards if you needed to, but and it's durable. I mean, that's the other thing. It's very durable. Yeah, there's other things that might work in other ways better, but they're not as durable. For instance, paper clay, you know, it's just not going to be as durable. And you can't really do a polymer clay because you have to bake it. So you know, you're not going to want to bake your plastic doll head with the epoxy on it, even though you're doing it at a low temperature. You don't want to do that. So we're just going to keep working on this as best we can, get it as smooth as we can in the best shape that we can, and then whatever's left will end up having to do some sanding. So at this point, I'm getting close to where I want to be. It's starting to look a little bit more. I have to get these lips curved in. That's kind of interesting, and I want to keep smoothing it. You know, as you work with epoxy, it starts to dry out. Even though it takes a long time for it to actually cure, you know, like overnight, it does start to dry out pretty quick. So I have to keep putting some water on it and smoothing it, because I don't want it to start drying in a shape that is not what I want. I'm using a variety of tools here, as you can see. I'm using my pointy tool, which I find I use in pretty much every project for something or other. And I'm using that clay tool that I like. If you are using your tools and the epoxy starts to dry on them, you can just use your sanding block and just sand it off and get back down to the metal. I find I have to do that sometimes. And sometimes, like, I'll forget that I was using it on epoxy and leave it overnight, and then it's really, really hard. So then I definitely have to sand it off. But usually while I'm working on it, because I continue to put water on it and wipe it off with either a paper towel or my fingers, usually can keep it pretty smooth. So I just love this clay tool. It's my very, very favorite tool, and I've had it for many, many years. I lost it one time, the original one, and I couldn't find it, so I had to buy another one, and then I found the original. So now I have two. So that's great. I don't mind having two. That way I always have one if I think I lose another one. But it's easy to lose here in my craft room because it's pretty messy. All right, so next step. When you get down to a certain place and you want to just start smoothing and you're not doing so much carving, I like to use a paintbrush. And I like to use one that has sort of a flat tip, but has some structure to it, and it has a little stiffness to it. And if you put some water on it, then you're able to sort of use it as both a molding and as a smoothing tool. So you can kind of press down and mold in a soft, gentle way that's unlike, using the metal hard tool, but still getting, some benefit of molding. And then also you can use it to smooth, because like I said, the less you're going to have to use sanding, the better. So if you could get this as smooth as possible with a paintbrush, you're going to love that. Trust me, you're going to love that. So I'm just really kind of fine-tuning here. These are the last steps. Getting the lips curved in, getting it smoothed. And you'll notice that I have the bottom lip is going in so that the upper lip is sort of protruding over that, and that's kind of how that picture looks to me. So that was one of the things I really wanted to work on. That's easier with this. Also the chin, I want to make sure this is rounded and comes down exactly onto the chin, so there's not a gap between the epoxy and the actual doll face. That needs to be smooth. And also I'm going in those grooves with the tip of the brush to help make sure I have those grooves, because I am 100% sure now I'm going to have to do the cheeks with the epoxy. Didn't really want to, but it is what it is. We got to make it look right. Okay, so we will finish up this part in this video. We'll let it dry overnight. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll just go ahead and do the cheeks, build up with the epoxy, get it where we want it, let that dry overnight. I'll post a video about this, just doing the cheek part. I think it's nicer to have these shorter videos. I think it works a little bit better. And then after that, we'll have to start doing some sanding. And we'll be spending a lot of time sanding. A lot of time. Probably not completely on camera, but because it's going to take a long time. But we'll do the sanding. I'll show you how to do it. And then after all that, we'll have to do the dreaded airbrush to paint the face the color that we want it. So lots more work to come up with this doll. We've got, once we get it painted and everything, we're going to have to install some eyelashes on the bottom of the lids and things like that. That's really different for Blythe. But all things that we can use on really Blythe's or any doll, really, for that matter, not just this one. So I hope you enjoyed this process so far. It's interesting. Definitely I'm doing some new things. And hope you'll stick with it and come back for the next section when we start on the cheeks. So thanks for watching, and bye.